Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. May was a busy month, but I did manage to do some reading. I finished 4 novels. So out of the 4 novels I completed, the majority of them were science fiction, which is quite a twist on my normal genre reading. The first novel that I read was, of course, Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells. Fugitive Telemetry is the 6th novel in the Murderbot series, and it is a novella that takes place after the only current novel in the series. And Fugitive Telemetry is a Murderbot murder mystery. Murderbot has to join up with station security to solve a murder that happened on Preservation Station. Made all the better because station security still doesn't know how it really feels about having a rogue sec unit running about on the station. I really enjoyed this one. Murderbot's interactions with the companions we've been following throughout the whole series, but also now the interplay with station security and with some of the suspects that they end up detaining, and also with the other bots on Preservation Station. It opened up the world building a lot, especially focusing on Preservation and how Preservation thinks about things, and it was just very fun. As usual, I highly recommend. If you hadn't heard the news, Martha Wells, the author, just signed a big book deal. I think it's 5 books, but I might have that number wrong. And this deal includes 3 more Murderbot books and also 1 or 2 novels in a new fantasy series. And I think the first one is coming out in 2022. Also, Network Effect, the novel, won the Nebula Award last night. So that's super exciting. We love Murderbot. The next novel I read is the fantasy that I read this month, and it is an e-arc that I got from NetGalley, The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, which my dogs are playing in the other room. Puppies, no guarantee on silence. The Jasmine Throne is an adult epic fantasy that's multi-character following 2 main characters. The first main character is the sister to the emperor who didn't follow through with this sacrificial rite that was expected of her, not only from the emperor, but from their religion. And she has been ostracized and basically kept prisoner ever since. The emperor sends his sister off to be guarded by one of his governors in this old temple for a religion that no longer really exists. And he really just wants to get her to relent, to do the sacrificial thing that he and his religion demand, and then all will be set right. The other main character is a maid that works in the household of this governor, and she is familiar with the very dangerous, treacherous temple where the sister is being held, and is tasked with, at first, going up to take care of the sister's needs, but then eventually becomes her companion, and the 2 of them hatch a plan to help the sister escape. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in this book, especially the world building and the character development. In the setting, there is this rot that is overtaking the forests around the main cities that has everyone very worried, and only very special types of wood can heal this rot. There's also threat of insurrection from within the empire. And there's this dynamic between this current religion that the emperor believes in and this religion and kind of magical ability that the maid still has, belonging to those who used to live at the temple where the emperor's sister is currently being held. So I found the world building very rich. I really liked the character dynamics and the motivations between the main characters, but also some side characters that you get introduced to. They are very much characters that will do the hard thing that needs doing because it's the right thing to do, or it's because it's the thing they believe in. A lot of the plot revolves around kind of tackling some of these issues from the past and people struggling to regain that power. For me, the weakness of this novel was actually the plot. The first half of the novel I found very interesting and I was engaged with, and then I felt like it sagged in the middle. Not enough for me to stop reading. I still wanted to find out what happened, but I found myself getting a little bit bored. That said, there is great diverse representation within this novel. The world building and the characters are good, and I think it would be worth picking up and giving a try. The next book I read was based on a recommendation of a Reddit thread I saw. And this thread was talking about all sorts of science fiction, and one of the subcategories was First Contact, No War, which intrigued me because I've always been a fan of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. If you're familiar with that one, there are close encounters happening, people having contact with aliens, but they don't know that at first, and they're trying to understand what's happening to them, and it's very kind of a hopeful movie. So when I picked up this next book, I really hoped that it would be like that. And the novel is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I have certainly heard of the Green brothers before because of Vlogbrothers, and also because Hank's brother John is a young adult author, but I've never read anything by either of them before. So I was excited to pick up this adult, contemporaneously set science fiction, and I really enjoyed this one. In this story, a young 20-something woman named April May is walking through New York City one night in present times, and she sees this very unique statue sitting there and takes a moment to recognize, like, hey, whoever the artist was, whoever made that statue, that is really cool. We should acknowledge that this thing exists. And calls her friend, and they make a short little spoof video about how this statue that she names Carl just appears in New York City. They do a fake interview with it where Carl is totally unresponsive. That's it. But the YouTube video goes viral, and it turns out there wasn't just one Carl in New York City. There are over 200 Carls around the entire world that all showed up at the same time. And as the story progresses, we find out they are aliens. So the story deals with humanity and April trying to figure out, what do the Carls want? People who have come in contact with the Carls start experiencing a shared dream where there are puzzles to figure out, and so humanity bands together to figure out these puzzles, which reminded me a lot of Ready Player One, in order to try to learn who the Carls are and what they want, because the statues there haven't done too much that most people notice. Of course, there's another faction that, rather than believing the Carls are there to bring humanity together, they believe the Carls are dangerous, and so they're racing against everyone else to try to figure out the puzzles first. Underlying all this is this sort of thought and discussion about viral media and celebrity status, and how April and her friend, because of this video they post, become basically celebrities overnight, and how it becomes important to try to spin the narrative and control the story in a sense, and how you kind of develop your online persona. Knowing that that sort of thing happened to Hank Green, the author, and that he can write from authentic experience of knowing what it's like to go from this kind of unknown person to like an internet celebrity to now he runs businesses and has a lot of influence in the world, that added an extra layer of interest to reading this story. I thought it was very fun. The main character is funny, and the narrator is definitely a flawed and unreliable narrator. So if you want to try science fiction and haven't read too much, or you want to read something that is set contemporaneously in our current day, or you just want to read a very interesting take on a first contact story, I would recommend reading this one. There is a sequel, and I will be picking it up soon. The last novel that I read was The Expanse #3, Abaddon's Gate, continuing on with my series read. Since it's a series, it's hard to discuss the plot, but if you're familiar at all with the show, in book 3, this is when the ring appears, and they're starting to investigate the ring. As usual, I really enjoyed the insight from reading the novel, not just watching the TV show, and I'm going to definitely be continuing to read the series. I've already picked up the next one from my library. The fifth thing I want to talk about is a podcast, and that's only because I got so sucked into this podcast that I failed to listen to the audiobook that I had planned to listen to this month. And the podcast is 13 Minutes to the Moon. It's a program by the BBC, and Hans Zimmer does the music. And as you might have guessed, it focuses in on the last 13 minutes of the Apollo 11 mission before they land on the moon. Each episode really hones in on some aspect that the majority of people in the world may not know. They talk about the 1202 alarm, they talk about the spacecraft itself, they talk about flight controllers, they talk about the computers, not only the people, but the actual software that was being developed. All these little pieces that come together to make the mission a success, and all the places where it could have scrubbed or gone horribly wrong, and yet it didn't at the last moment. So if you enjoy spaceflight, NASA, moon landings, science and technology, I highly recommend giving 13 Minutes to the Moon a try. It's about 13 episodes and each is an hour long. That's what I read in the month of May. I have a lot of exciting things on hold at the library and on my TBR that I'd like to get to this month. Let me know, have you read any of the books that I discussed today? Have you listened to that podcast? Are you going to? Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video so that you can see when I post my future book reviews, recommendations, and reading wrap-ups. And don't forget to support your local library. Bye.